The Great King of Pirates. Chapter 31. An uncomfortable moan sounded, and Ba Jin struggled to open his eyes. My head hurts, what's wrong with me? She was startled by her own hoarse voice, and her throat was as dry as the cracked earth. As soon as I wanted to get up, a wave of dizziness suddenly struck, and then I felt a splitting headache and a terrible hot body. I have a high fever. After all, he has lived for many years, and he still knows the general symptoms. I remember that when I beat Wabel yesterday, I sweated a lot, and was blown by the cold wind, and then I was still on the street in the cool breeze in the middle of the night, and it was not strange that I seemed to have a cold. It's good that it's not at sea, said Ba Jin, who was very happy. As an old-timer, who sailed with Whitebeard, she knew very well that if she was sick at sea and lacked medical supplies and doctors, it would be tantamount to waiting for death. Wabel. Wabel. Baysand hissed hoarsely. Hoo-hoo, hoo-hoo. But in response to her, it was only the fat son's incomparably powerful snoring. Fool, said Barkin, angry, and felt his head hurt even more. At this time, when she saw the humanoid object on the sofa and shrunk in the quilt, she remembered that she had spent the night at the octopus ball boy's house. The structure of the house is simple. It is a whole hall. In addition to the bathroom and kitchen that are isolated, the hall is also placed with a dining table, a bed, a sofa, a coffee table and so on. The bed was naturally occupied by Ba Jin, and the sofa was too small for Wabel to sleep, so he cheapened that kid. Put the things in the hall against the wall, and tidy up an open space, where Wabel slept. Octopus ball boy. Hey, hurry up, mother-in-law, I'm dying of thirst. Ba Jin had a terrible headache, which made her temper even more irritable. Seeing that he shouted desperately a few times but didn't respond, he picked up his palm and threw it over. Bang! The cane smashed into Kapazi's body accurately, waking him up. What's wrong? Looking at the sleepy-eyed guy, Ba Jin didn't have time to continue to get angry, and hurriedly said, give me a glass of water, I'm dying of thirst. Lord Barkin, what's wrong with your voice? Are you an idiot? I'm sick. Hurry up and give me a cup of hot water, and then get me to the doctor. Ba Jin felt that her patience had been completely exhausted, and the extreme discomfort of her body made her more and more irritable. Okay, good, but Paxi nodded hurriedly. Then he was a little embarrassed, and said, but Lord Bajin, I have no money now. You ate a lot of things from me yesterday, and today you are out of the stall and need to replenish the supply. I gave all my money to the seafood merchant at the pier, so I went to the doctor. Ba Jin's expression was a little painful, this selfish and greedy old woman, but as long as she could take advantage of a bailee, she was not willing to pay a penny more. But now it's really uncomfortable, so I can only take out a small part of the money from the ball coat and say, you take these first, and when you earn money, you must pay me back. But Lord Bajin, this is for you. Shut up, now you are all mine, and your money is even more mine. Why don't you hurry up and get me a doctor, do you want to die? But Posey had a eating expression on his face and took a few bailies into his arms. Don't try to run away or not come back, or I'll have my son kill all the townspeople and hunt you down all over the world. But Poxy's expression became even more gloomy, and he nodded helplessly. Understood, Lord Ba Jin. As soon as Ba Jin showed off his martial power, he felt that his body was also warmer, so he took hot water and lay comfortably in the bed. But Posey walked out of the house with a bitter face and walked towards the location of the clinic in town. However, halfway along the way, I turned around and came to a small hidden courtyard. Captain. There were 3 young men in the courtyard, dressed in the clothes of ordinary civilians, with no features. At this time, they all stood up and greeted Kapazi. Ba Jin has taken the poison and is now showing symptoms, and for the next few days I will continue to weaken her physical functions until she is completely deprived of her mobility and she will be unconscious. In the last few days, I will try to gain the trust of Wabel. When the time comes, you can go ahead with your plan, you know. Understood. Has the notice from the kingdom reached this side? There are 2 days to go up and we will be in town. Very good. Kepozi finally looked at his team members solemnly and said, remember, we must not fail. This is the first mission that His Majesty the King has given to Armia, and it is also our first mission. Such honors are enough for us to finish the task and make up for any mistakes that may arise. Yes. Valpo's request was simple and brutal. Just find a place where no one was, kill Barkin, and then coax Wabel to return home. However, Posey felt that the plan was very flawed, and that it might be detected by Wabel in the future, so he took the initiative to modify the plan to perfection. Fortunately, it wasn't a waste of time, and Jace was left to him. In the next few days, Kapoxy continued to poison, endured Ba Jin's poisonous scolding, and took care of the old witch's life. The town's doctors have all been tied up to their homes by Wabel, but they are helpless to deal with Bajin's symptoms. These quacks should all be hung on the gallows, let the vultures eviscerate them, and let them die a miserable death. The treatment that had not been asked for many days had already made Ba Jin a little frightened, and the roar in his heart at this time could not alleviate the shadow of death in his heart. I don't have the wealth I squandered, I don't have the supreme power, I can't just die here. Looking at the last doctor, Ba Jin struggled to stretch out his dry palm from the quilt, grabbed the doctor's cuff, and cried, "Help me, save my doctor." The doctor shook his head helplessly and said, "I'm sorry, I really can't help it, I've never seen this kind of illness of yours. After all, the sea is so vast that even if you practice medicine all your life, you can't see all the diseases." Quote. I'm going to die, I'm going to die. Ba Jin muttered in despair, the vicious light in his eyes shining, and his expression changed from sluggish to ruthless. If you want me to die, I won't let you live. If I'm not saved, I'll have Wabel kill you all, and you'll all bury me. She pointed to the doctor. You're the first to die. The resentful voice was terrifying to everyone present. The doctor's face changed greatly, and he hurriedly said, "It's not that there is no way. Don't get excited, it's not that there is no way. What's the solution? Tell me." Ba Jin hurriedly asked, as he grasped the straw of life. The new king of the Magnetic Drum Kingdom, the Holy Land of Medicine, has issued the latest decree. Every 3 years, the Magnetic Drum Kingdom will send a group of doctors to conduct voluntary rounds in a fixed area to help patients in need for diagnosis and treatment. Quote. Tomorrow, the first doctors from the Drum Kingdom will come to our town. Although the doctor's life was threatened at this time, he still had a look of reverence when he mentioned the Magnetic Drum Kingdom. Magnetic Drum Kingdom. Ba Jin lived so many thoughts. Naturally he had heard the name of a medical power, and his face was also happy. I'm saved, I'm saved. Regardless of whether or not he can really be cured in the end, at least Ba Jin is now full of hope for life. Illness is the thing that most wears down people's will, and it is also the thing that makes people have the greatest hope for miracles. I think I can salvage it. It can be said that it is the voice of every patient. Time runs as usual, and the next morning, a small boat slowly docks on the town's dock. However, compared to Barkin's humble boat, this ship is much more delicate and expensive. A smooth staircase stretched out of the boat, and landed firmly on the pony's head, and several doctors in white coats, dressed in fluttering clothes, walked down, and more than a dozen beautiful nurses carried some equipment, followed closely behind. Since Valpo became king, he has been very concerned about the appearance of doctors. There are nearly 100 doctors in the kingdom, all of whom have their own special stylists. The rest of the little doctors are also enough to have a public stylist to manage. We strive to provide patients who come to the doctor with peace of mind and vision. Several doctors in the town looked at the doctors of Magnetic Drum Island surrounded by chic and extraordinary, beautiful women. Look at the clothes in Pudding, and the very fat wife at home, they are secretly ashamed of themselves. We don't talk nonsense, we pull the patients, we only stay here for a day. The middle-aged physician led by him was extraordinary, without the slightest sense of politeness, and went straight to the point. Won't you take a break? After all, the journey is tiring, and we have prepared food and drinks, and it is not too late to see a patient after we have eaten. Quote. No, we're pressed for time, we don't have any spare time to spend here longer, let's start now. Quote. Seeing that the doctors of the Magnetic Drum Kingdom were so persistent, no one was saying anything. At this time, Kapoxy came out and said, My lord, can you please see my mother-in-law first? She is now terminally ill, and she only has half an hour of waking time every day. I'm afraid that if it drags on any longer, it will. He didn't say anything further, but the doctor on Drum Island knew what he meant. Well, first heavy and then lighter. If the condition is really as serious as you say, Let's hurry over. After all, it is important to save people. Quote. When Posey heard this, he was overjoyed and said, "Thank you so much, doctor, please come with me." Quote. He led the way in front, followed by a vast array of doctors and nurses. The townspeople didn't join in the fun, and the old woman's shout yesterday could be heard by them, so they didn't have the slightest affection for Ba Jin's mother and son. Hurry up and save that old woman, and then get out of here with her fat, pig-like son, don't die here. Quote. For the sake of their lives, the townspeople could only pinch their noses and pray for the disgusting dead old woman. The white doctor, who was dressed in white, took the examination instrument away from Ba Jin's body, and muttered, "This is see hot flashes, which is a very rare disease, which is not contagious and can be cured." Quote. Ba Jin, who looked like he could swallow his breath at any time, heard the word, cure, barely supported himself, and tried to open his mouth and said, "Doctor, you must cure me, you must cure me." The doctor nodded and said, "It's not a big problem, but because it has dragged on for too long, with our current conditions, we can only ensure that the condition does not deteriorate. If you want to be completely healed, you must go to the kingdom to be able to take root completely." Quote. It's good if it can be cured, it's good if it can be cured. Ba Jin's eyes were red, his mouth trembled, and he could only read this sentence. But, anyone who is afraid of, the doctor's one word, made Ba Jin's heart lift again. But what? Ba Jin didn't even dare to look at the doctor's face, for fear of saying something bad. The disease has seriously affected your physical function, and even if it is cured, your physical condition is not as good as before, so you have to be prepared. The doctor said. Ba Jin was relieved. Now as long as I can live, everything else is easy to say. Understood, understood. She nodded desperately with the strength she had left. When are we going to be in the Drum Kingdom? Quote. The sooner the better, but you'll have to go on your own. We still have a free clinic mission with us, and it is impossible for us to accompany you. The doctor said. However, looking at Ba Jin's old face and his expression full of pleading, the doctor could only say in embarrassment, "Then I will shoot 2 trainee doctors to follow, and give you an experienced crew member who is familiar with the route, at most I can only help you with this." Quote. Thank you, doctor, thank you, said Ba Jin, who thanked him excitedly. However, under the great joy, her body could no longer support it, and as soon as her eyelids sank, she passed out directly. But Poxy and the doctor behind the doctor quietly made eye contact, and a smile appeared on the corner of their mouths. The big picture is set, and the plan is successful. When Ba Jin woke up the next day, he found that the doctor and the nurse had left, but the 2 doctors who said they had stayed behind had stayed. Wabel, pick me up with the quilt in my hand, get out of here and get back to the boat. Now she doesn't have much time to be awake every day, and she takes advantage of the fact that she is now conscious and hurried to let her son take action. 2 doctors followed, but Posey followed, trying to get his quilt back. When he arrived, K. Poxy said, Lord Bajan, can you give me back the quilt? Now that I am penniless, if I don't have the quilt, I will have a hard time staying up at night in the future. Quote. When Ba Jin saw Keposi, he smiled with difficulty. I almost forgot about you. Wabel, get this kid up too, he'll be our ship's cook from now on. Don't. I don't want to be your cook. Posey looked horrified, obviously not expecting this to be the end. You can't help it, said Barkin, smug, obviously proud that he had earned a good cook for nothing. The scene of that night reappeared, and with a wave of his hand, Wabel grabbed him in his hands. But compared to that time, he was much gentler at this time. Aussie's food is delicious, make it for Wabel. When everything was ready, the sailors left behind by the doctor of the magnetic drum kingdom slowly sailed the boat out of the town. But Posey had no choice but to accept his fate, and after preparing dinner, he hastily ate a little, and then came to the lookout and watched the sunset with great attention. It was only after night had covered the sea and everyone on board had gone to rest that he stood up, put his hand on the fence, and pulled the phone bug from his bosom. Brew brew. Click. As soon as I remembered it, the other side had already picked it up. How's the mission going? Jace asked on the other end of the phone. It's done. Kaposi replied in a low voice. Wabel is already on board the ship, and is expected to return to the kingdom in 12 days. Quote. Next, Kaposi gave a detailed report on all the planned actions. You have done a very good job. I will repeat all the details to your majesty in full. I think your majesty will appreciate your careful thinking. Jace complimented. But Po Shi was overjoyed in his heart, and replied, "It is my highest honor to be loyal to your majesty." After hanging up the phone, he deftly turned over and jumped off the 4-meter-high observation deck and quietly returned to his room. It was a nice night. At the same time, on a small island in the West Sea, in a dark room, sat a hooded man. If it weren't for the bullying chest and the slightly trembling nose under the flickering candlelight, it would not be too much to say that he was a dead man. He sat like this until the stout candle burned to the last point, and the flame was about to be waxed, without any movement. Wave. Pink petals floated in the air, and a slightly darkened arm suddenly appeared on the table, and the roots were connected to the table. The man did nothing unusual about the arm that suddenly grew out of the table, took out the banknote and placed it in the palm of his arm. Agreed. Quote. The delicate petals reappeared, then slowly dissipated into the air. Looking at the two words on the white paper, a smile appeared on the man's cold face. Hanging up the phone bug and slowly exhaling, Valpo leaned on the throne with a relaxed expression, enjoying the two good news that appeared at the same time. Wibble will arrive in the Drum Kingdom in 10 days, and the unconscious old woman will be in his hands, and there will be no accidents. There has been a clear reply from the Shihai side, but the specific operation is inevitably a little troublesome. The eyes focused on Nicole Robin were too much. After all, her knowledge of ancient documents and historical texts, whether it is a clear signpost to the burial place of One Piece, or the location of the ancient weapon, Hades, makes her especially valuable. If she could be brought out of the West Sea so easily, Clockdoll wouldn't have waited so many years before he could get into action. But Crowley Moan, the hypnotist he brought back, made it all easier. 3 days ago, Valpo's guards commander had already found Chloe, who had just gone to sea. After a simple and rough punch to stun him, by the way, the deputy captain who had not been recruited for a long time was also packed and taken away. Although Crowroman doesn't look down on this guy who pretends to be a ghost, he is also a talent that His Majesty needs to name. According to the distance, the three of them will return to the kingdom more than 10 days after Wable arrives, just in time for the migration of the country. Take advantage of this time to make some preliminary arrangements in the West Sea. Your Majesty, Dr. Kurha has arrived outside the palace. The guards came in and told him. Looking at the guard, who was much better than some time ago, but his face was still a little depressed, Valpo said, "Let her in." Quote. Yes. Ever since he knew that it was his own mental power suppression that caused these guards to behave abnormally, he had been studying how to restrain this power. Fortunately, it is not difficult. After all, spiritual power, which is an idealistic power, as long as you think in your heart, it will be completed according to the requirements. Although it cannot be completely converged, it will no longer affect the normal behavior of ordinary people. Your Majesty. Kurha saluted in the main hall. Looking at this old woman who is over 130 years old and still shouting that she is, like a flower like jade, every day, Valpo can't help but admire such vitality. Will that target person, who will be reached in 10 days, be able to play his part? He asked. If it's just a seriously ill and dying old woman, it's not difficult for me. After all, I've seen too many people like that. Kurha was a little embarrassed, but if I want to stage a mother-son relationship with an intellectually disabled adult man, I may not be able to do it. Quote. Looking at Kurha's old face, Daihao didn't want to embarrass her. Forget it, you will appear once a month as Ba Jin, and each time you appear, you only need to strengthen Wable's loyalty to me. In a year and a half to 2 years, you can almost form an inherent thinking. As long as Barking doesn't show up again, I'll be the person he trusts the most. Quote. In another 5 or 10 years, even if Ba Jin is reborn, it is impossible for my words to work. Quote. Valpo's original plan was to kill Barking directly and trick Wable back to China. Then use the Tuntun factory to transform a fake, Bajin, directly order Wable to follow Valpo's instructions, and then the fake, Bajin disappears. And Pazuko's plan is to fill in some loopholes in the original plan. Letting Wable see his mother being healed was the most important of all, and it was one thing that would increase his trust in the kingdom. Of course, the moment Ba Jin was pushed into the treatment room, he would be killed directly. Ba Jayan, played by Kurha, directly took her place and began to persuade Wabel to let him repay the favor. After Wabel accepts Valpo as a benefactor, Barkin will use his illness as an excuse to hide behind the scenes. After that, he will come out once or twice a month and continue to instill the idea of repaying his kindness, being loyal to the king, loyal to the country, and loyal to King Valpo. In another year or two, after Wabel's mind is stabilized, Ba Jayan will silently die, and Valpo will become his only person to rely on and trust. Is it really extremely troublesome and cumbersome to do this, and inexplicably add a lot of work to yourself? But what Posey said finally convinced Jason Valpo. There are many types of devil fruits in the world, and some of them are even more terrifying. Among them, it may be said that there is the ability to bring up other people's memories and know this history. Or simply become the image of Ba Jin and directly snatch control of Wabel. Quote. These words made Valpo couldn't help but be impressed. This kind of precautionary character, cautious style, and action to eliminate danger and nip the state of action are very suitable for being the chief agent of the purification department. Valpo already has his own arrangements for the heads of various departments of the military intelligence service, but there are still a few positions, and there are not enough capable people to sit. But the appearance of Boxy is tantamount to sending charcoal in the snow. The Mia is in charge of superficial articles, and Valpo doesn't care if it's good or bad. Even if it is made into a joke, it can have the effect of paralyzing the enemy. Valpo is focusing on the remaining 6. MI2 is responsible for dealing with persons and forces that threaten national security, as well as for the pursuit of fugitives. The person in charge has been made clear as Wabel. After all, this position doesn't require too many brains, as long as you can play. MI3 is responsible for undercover work and, if necessary, is able to take the place of certain important positions. At first, I wanted Chloe to be in charge, but now that there is a talent like Keposi, it would be a waste if I didn't try to train it. Mule is full of intelligence agents. Combing through intelligence and surveying the enemy's situation is their only task, and the person in charge is Nicole Robin, who is still in the West Sea. MI5 is the assassination department, which is responsible for killing important targets. Locke was able to create his own silent step, Spoon, which shows that his cultivation talent is indeed amazing. Can hide the killing nature, dormant for several years, patience is naturally good. And with a brilliant mind, it's not a waste to do killer work. The construction of MI6 can be slowed down. After all, as a support department, there is not even a target for support, and there is no need to build it now. The elite was selected from the remaining 5 places, and the 7 places that gathered together were naturally directly controlled by Valpo, and they were also his strongest escort force. No matter how strong he is, as a king, he still can't fall behind in the pomp and circumstance he should have. What 3 and 4 can hit in front of him, it is too detrimental to the majesty of the king. Looking at Kurha, who is still waiting for orders in the palace, Valpo said, Kulokas has 3 or 4 days to reach the kingdom, and you will be in charge of the reception. That's not inferior to your doctor, some more difficult scientific research, he should give new ideas, which will be of great help to us. Quote. Kurha nodded, and praised it. Kurokas is indeed very capable, and when One Piece stopped in the magnetic drum kingdom for a short time to replenish, I also exchanged some ideas with him. Although there is only one side, I can feel that his medical strength is indeed excellent. When One Piece re-embarked on the Great Route, the route choice was the 4th route, and it was not surprising that he passed by the Drum Kingdom. When does His Majesty need to receive Kulokas? Asked Kurha again. It will be set that night, and I will give him a banquet in the kingdom, and you will join him. Valpo said. After all, the current upper echelons of the kingdom are Dalton and you. At the banquet, Kulokas should have some questions to ask, just about to dispel his concerns by the way. Quote. Kurha nodded, she understood what His Majesty the King meant. Your Majesty, if there are no other arrangements, I will go down and prepare first. Quote. Go ahead. Quote. At the same time, in a village on an unnamed island in the West Sea, a girl is silently curled up in the corner of her house, sleeping quietly. Although the room is dilapidated, there are tables, chairs, benches, beds, and stoves. She didn't choose to sleep on a soft bed, but in an extremely uncomfortable state, she tried to curl herself up in a ball, trying to hide her presence as much as possible. The girl in her sleep frowned, and seemed to have indescribable sorrow. Should have slept peacefully, but he was full of exhaustion. A cold wind blew through the cracks in the house, making the skinny girl hold herself harder. But the cold remained until it woke her from her sleep. In the middle of the night, the quiet environment and the empty room made her extremely insecure, and she couldn't sleep even more. The cold wind hit, not only blowing on her body, but also cold in her heart. When I came to the window that was blown open by the cold wind, I got up and walked over to close it again. But in the house not far away, the dim lamps and shadowy figures attracted her attention. That's the home of your new leader. 2 days ago, I just joined this little-known small organization, just to get a living environment where I can eat and clothe. But she has experienced the cruelty of the world since she was a child, and she also understands that there are no benefits in the world. Getting it also means giving more. What you can give is your own head and mind. The former is worth a lot of money, and the latter is worth more. Some people are for their own heads, and some people are for their own heads. The former wants to take life, the latter wants to deprive of liberty. It's impossible for her to tolerate this. With your hands crossed over your chest, a wisp of fragrance wafts away in the wind, and bright petals dance. In the wooden house with the lights on, the three figures who were talking did not notice at all that a slender arm appeared above their heads. In the palm of the front of the arm, a small ear is trembling slightly. 10 minutes later, Nicole Robin disarmed herself, and the numbness in her empty eyes deepened. Without hesitation, he rolled down from the small window on one side and walked quickly towards the dock without looking back. Her movements are extremely skillful, and her years of experience make her not hesitate or pause at this moment. At this moment, she remembered the man who secretly found her some time ago, and the promise he made. Hold on a little longer, just hold on for a while longer, and I'll be living in this world again. The cold wind is still there, but the eyes that have been silent for 10 years seem to have some kind of emotion burning in the depths. 3 days later, in the evening, Kulokas, accompanied by Dalton and Kurha, arrived in front of the royal palace on the central Pillar Mountain. The last time I came to the Magnetic Drum Kingdom, it was just a pause to resupply. At that time, the identity of the pirate was not qualified to meet His Majesty the King of the Kingdom, and he was annoyed for a long time at that time. Quote. On the snowy winter island, the fancy old man still wearing beach clothes is naturally Kulokas. I didn't expect that it would be a great honor to be invited to be a consultant to the Holy Land of Medicine, in my lifetime. Quote. Dalton said, Your Majesty has a great deal of regard for your medical abilities, and it is a pleasure to have you here. Quote. Kulokas said with deep meaning, I hope that Your Majesty the King really just values my medical ability. After all, my old bones can't stand the toss. Quote. Come in, Kurokas. Kurha did not answer Kulokas's words and said, His Majesty has prepared a dinner. If you have any questions, you can meet with Your Majesty in person. I believe you will not be disappointed. Quote. The three of them were silent and soon came to the side hall. There is no excessive decoration, because everything in the palace has been luxurious and elegant to the extreme. The huge dining table occupies nearly half of the area of the side hall, and on the main seat at one end, the heroic and majestic man has already sat down. Your Majesty. Kulokas saluted. It's a pleasure to meet you, One Piece's ship doctor, Kulokas. Valpo stood up from his main seat and walked towards Kulokas with a smile. Hearing Valpo hear One Piece, Kulokas frowned quietly. I am also honored to be summoned by His Majesty the King. Kulokas looked directly at Valpo. As a man who sails with One Piece, the lord of a country does not make him fearful. If it weren't for those conditions, he wouldn't even have set out. Noticing Kulokas's strangeness and vigilance, Valpo smiled, Don't be wary of me. I'm not interested in Ralph Drew's location, or One Piece's treasure, or anything else that would warn you. Quote. Of course, if you want, you can tell me the story of the adventure back then. After all, the adventures of One Piece are still relatively attractive to me. Quote. Kurokas didn't expect Valpo to be so straightforward, and wondered, Are you really just looking for me to be a medical advisor? The Magnetic Drum Kingdom is a big medical country, and if you want to maintain an advanced medicine that is ahead of the world, it is naturally the best choice to recruit a famous doctor like Mr. Kulokas. Quote. If that's the case, I'm naturally more than willing to join the medical system of the Drum Kingdom. But before I do that, I want to make sure that what Dalton told me is true. Quote. The Rumba pirates have all been wiped out, and only Nosasong Brook remains, who is still alive because he ate the yellow spring fruit. Quote. And is he still sailing? Valpo thought for a moment, and although there was only one skeleton left on the ship, Brook was still in a state of sailing, and said, although I am stuck somewhere now, I am sailing. Quote. Then let him continue sailing. Kulokas said. A man of the sea, he will travel his promise. Sail the world for a week, then return to the Twin Gorges and pick up Rab, it was their promise. Even if Brook is the only one left on the ship, this promise should not be broken. Valpo didn't understand the thinking of this and the people of the world, but whether to take Brook back now or let him continue sailing. As long as Kulokas is willing to stay in the Drum Kingdom, he doesn't care. If there are no doubts, then let's start today's dinner. Valpo laughed. You may not know, I can only eat real food once a month, and it took me a lot of perseverance to resist the desire to eat it all before you reach the palace. Quote. What does His Majesty usually eat? Asked Kurokas with interest. Let's talk about this later, for now, let's talk about some happy questions. After all, Kulokas is also the former crew member of One Piece, and he has an incomparable heroism in his temperament, and after a few glasses of wine, he gradually began to talk about romance. Curious about One Piece's voyage, Dalton began to talk to Kulokas. He didn't hide it either. After all, his sailing experience was not something worth keeping secret. Seeing that everyone's interest was high, he took a small paragraph from the many stories of One Piece and slowly narrated it in the form of a story. 14 years ago, Roger, who had already made a name for himself in the New World, when he learned that he was seriously ill and dying soon, planned to re-embark on the great voyage and experience the waves and magnificence of the sea for the last time. Quote. Entering the great voyage from the East China Sea, he met me, who was guarding the lighthouse in the Twin Gorges. Quote. The story. That's it. Powerful giants who have dueled on the primeval island for nearly 100 years, Angel Island, the land of the Sea of Clouds, the Sky Island, and the Long Ring Island with strange elongated creatures, etc. Opened Dalton's and Kurha's eyes. The atmosphere of the dinner was very high throughout the whole time, and Valpo was also very happy in his eyes. In any case, Kulokas had officially taken up the position of medical advisor of the Magnetic Drum Kingdom, and went to work at the National Hospital early the next morning to familiarize himself with the working environment. A week later, Valpo finally saw the longing Wibble in the treatment room of the National Hospital. At this time, the real Ba Jin had been directly executed in the treatment room. This cruel and selfish old woman, without any consciousness, was directly taken from her life, which can be regarded as cheap. Don't worry, although your mother is very sick, this is the Magnetic Drum Kingdom, she will be fine. Valpo stood beside Wabel and whispered comfortingly. This simple stupid big man, at this time, his face is full of imitation, like an unprotected young bird, and he seems to be overwhelmed by everything. Mom is so pitiful, Mom is so pitiful. Quote. He apparently didn't notice Valpo beside him, just kept muttering the words in his mouth. Kurha, who had been preparing for a long time, walked into the treatment room through the secret door with Bajan's face. Signaling to the medic played by the MI agent on the side that Wabel could be brought in. The agent nodded, and walked out the door and shouted to Wabel, Mr. Wabel, your mother's treatment is going well, you can visit now, but you can't stay too long because the patient's body is not fully recovered. Quote. Wabel, who had always looked depressed, jumped up suddenly at this time and said in surprise, Mom is okay, I'm going to see Mom. Be quiet, if you make a noise to the patient, it will affect the recovery. The agent said dissatisfied. Yes, yes. Wabel, with a fierce face, behaved like a kitten at this time. If nothing else, the purer the mind, the easier it is to be grateful. Ba Jin only has an attitude towards Wabel as a tool, but Wabel really treats Ba Jin as the closest and most respected mother. The door to the room was open, and Valpo was standing in front of it, where Wibble could see at all times. The mother and son were whispering softly in the ward, and Barkin, pointing his finger at Valpo with a serious expression, while Wibble was looking at him carefully and nodding earnestly. Ba Jayan explained for more than an hour, and Wabel listened attentively for more than an hour, and there was no impatience on his face, but he was glad that his mother could say so much to him at once. The agent looked at the time and felt that it was almost there, so he went over and said, "Mr. Wabel, please leave the ward first, your mother needs plenty of rest now. And in the next month or so, she will need special care treatment to ensure that she can recover better." Quote. Wabel, you follow your majesty first, you must listen to your majesty's words, that is your mother's benefactor, and also your benefactor, you know. Ba Jian said. Got it, Mom. Wabel sniffled. Can I come back to see my mother tomorrow? In a month's time, if the recovery goes well, Mr. Wabel can come and visit again. The agent said. A month. That's too long, I don't want to. I'm going to see my mother tomorrow. Said Wabel. Obedient. If you don't, you'll never see me. Barkin handled it very roughly, but it was also her usual method, and it was very useful to Wabel. That. Okay, Mom. Seeing that, Ba Jian was angry, Wabel was really obedient. Turning back 3 times in one step, he reluctantly left the treatment room and stood obediently in front of Valpo. Benefactor, my mother said that I will listen to you in the future. Please rest assured, Wabel will definitely protect your safety with his life. Don't be so serious. Looking at this big man in front of him with great strength and infinite potential, Valpo was very excited in his heart. Effort as his expression is kinder, and he said to Wabel, in the future, just call me your majesty, it's too strange to call me a benefactor. Let's go, you haven't eaten anything delicious lately, today I asked the national chef to prepare a lot of food for you. All kinds of meals, absolutely able to fill your stomach. Wabel waited for his eyes to light up, and his saliva was almost on his chest. But how about you realize your power first? Valpo laughed. Wabel did not hesitate, patted his chest and said, Benefactor. Whatever His Majesty wants to see, Wabel will perform for His Majesty. Quote. In addition to the 5 cylindrical mountains that are 300 meters high, there are also some ordinary small hills of 50 to 100 meters in the magnetic drum kingdom. Because it is baptized by frost and snow and cold winds all year round, it is covered with thick white snow, and there are several meters of cold ice underneath, which can be described as extremely hard. Valpo looked at the cylindrical mountain, picked a small peak of less than 100 meters, and said to Wabel, Go, break that hill, and you can eat the food prepared today. Quote. If you don't break it, you can only eat half of it. Quote. Hearing that half of the food was missing, Wabel's eyes were red, and he jumped directly from the cylindrical mountain and flew towards the peak pointed by Valpo. Boom. The earth-shattering sound made the entire magnetic drum kingdom quite clear. Watching the snow fly in the sky and countless gravel scattered, Valpo smiled at the corner of his mouth. Da Flamingo, it's time to talk to you. 15 days later, it was time for the great migration of the Drum Kingdom. A lot of preparatory work before this, after half a year of hard work, has been carried out similarly. Magnetic Drum Island. Valpo is not ready to give up. This will play the role of a sub-base, and it is still the territory of the new Magnetic Drum Kingdom. Some of the older people on the island are also reluctant to leave their homeland, but want to stay here and continue to live. Valpo had no reason to object, nor did he have the right to leave the place where these old men were born. When the time comes, enough supplies will be left behind for the elderly to live for a while, and enough supplies will be sent to them every once in a while. Valpo did not intend to dismantle the buildings that had already been built at the medical department, as well as the equipment that had been purchased. The National Hospital became a branch of the National Medical Center and continued to provide medical treatment to the surrounding countries. Valpo sat on the throne with the latest newspaper in his hand. The one that occupies the largest space above is Da Flamingo, who just became the 7 Marshalseas some time ago. Looking at the title of The Return of the King, Valpo laughed meaninglessly. He had already gotten the letter number of the Da Flamingo phone bug a long time ago, but because he didn't have enough confidence and the identity was not equal, he didn't contact that guy for a long time. Looking through the window at Wabel, who was carrying a hill and trying to temper his flesh, he felt that now was the time to contact that guy. With a mere 200,000 citizens, Dalton is more like a town mayor than a king. In the previous life, an ordinary county town, if you add the population of the surrounding villages and townships, most of them were more than 500 or 600,000. In this way, the people under his direct jurisdiction are not even half a county. There is an urgent need to increase national strength. Quote. Pick up the phone bug and connect directly to the phone bug of Joker. No way, Doflamingo's personal phone bug is only owned within their family. Few people still know that the new king of Dressrosa is the dark intermediary, Joker of the underworld. Brew brew. The sound of the phone bug continued, and it took a long time for someone on the other side to connect. Doflamingo's voice came from the other side, with a feeling of depression in his arrogance, and he was very recognizable. Guest, tell me what you need. I'm sure you'll be able to wait for anything you want with me. To Valpo's surprise, he didn't expect Doflamingo to be more active and enthusiastic, without the slightest hint of a dark intermediary. Don't ask who the other party is, as long as you have money, you can meet any request of the other party, it's really a slow dark style. However, it is also good that it saves communication time. I need a large population. Quote. Doflamingo has been doing this for a few years, so he has a clear way out. Boom. The unruly laughter was enough to reflect the madness of the master, and Brother Ming said, since you can have my phone number, you are naturally not a nobody. Quote. I will not personally take over the slave trade of less than 1,000 people, and if it is just a small business of a few hundred people, it will come and disturb me. I will let you know the darkness of the world. Doflamingo's threatening words made Valpo frown and directly retract the idea of giving a 5-star review. Doflamingo, even if you're king, you're still a pirate, it's disappointing. Valpo sighed. I put up with you to be the king before I contacted you, and I thought that at least the person I talked to would not insult my status as king. Quote. I really didn't expect it. Doflamingo's eyes, hidden under the red sunglasses, flashed with an obscure brilliance, and said, do you know my identity? You've been moving so much lately, you can't even get people noticed. Valpo laughed and said, my heavenly gold is not something you can hijack. Quote. Doflamingo was a little confused. He clearly knows that there are many strong people in the world, so the targets he chooses to be plundered are all veritable weak countries. He didn't know that a certain country that was plundered by himself still had such a powerful intelligence capability. Who are you? Asked Doflamingo in a deep voice. Once the deal is done, you know who I am. Valpo spoke flatly. For the sake of our long-term trading in the future, I would like to remind you that we have been somewhat restrained recently. Quote. The childlike fruit ability under your command has the powerful ability to erase other people's memories, but the file will not be erased. Those disobedient pirates can be reduced, and it is indeed good to use them as cheap labor, but the spies of the Navy, you can just send them away, but don't die yourself. Quote. What you have done to seize the country is not seamless. The Navy's surveillance of you will continue for a long time to come, because you seem to be provoking more than just the Navy. Quote. Valpo stopped talking, leaving Doflamingo to reflect on the meaning of his words. In the palace, Valpo sat on the throne with his eyes closed, the phone bug on the table was always on, and the solemnity in the air could be felt by even a fool. Boom. The laughter came again, breaking the dull silence. Looks like I've made a good friend. Where Valpo couldn't see, Doflamingo's forehead was made up for by the bruises, the bulging skin and the rapid flow of blood, showing that he didn't want to be so calm. To be precise, those who know him well know that this is a manifestation of his violent state. Put away your smirk. Valpo is very strong. With Wabel is the confidence, as long as you guard against the childlike fruit of sucrose, it is not a big problem to draw the entire Don Quixote family. After all, Wabel is a powerful person who chases the entire Whitebeard remnants and runs all over the world. Although 10 years later, he is not much weaker now, and it is more than enough to protect himself. Not to mention that the entire magnetic drum kingdom, including him, is in a period of rapid ascent. After 3 or 4 years, without relying on Wabel, Valpo also has the confidence to crush the Don Quixote family. The various abilities that go against the sky and become perverted are the basis for him to lead the entire country to the strongest. Forcibly suppressing the anger in his heart, Doflamingo decided that if the other party was not strong enough, he would definitely make him pay a terrible price. But the guy who called himself the king was right. Now is not the time to be too high profile, whether it is the throne of the king who is not right, or the draconians who regard themselves as thorns in the flesh, or the Navy who has been slapped in the face by themselves once, they all want to kill the Don Quixote family. Very good, said Doflamingo, in a cold tone and with a gloomy face. How many slaves do you need? 5,000. Before Valpo could finish speaking, Doflamingo directly interrupted. Just 5,000 slaves, I will give it to you directly, as a reward for your reminder just now. 5,000 slaves, that is, the price of 20 or 30 million. Doflamingo is now difficult, but he can also afford to send it completely. Hee, Valpo smiled disdainfully. It's pathetic. Quote. The mocking smile made Doflamingo want to crawl over the signal and directly hit the hateful face with a super whip. I hope you'll be so atmospheric when I'm done. Doflamingo didn't continue to speak. The person on the other side of the phone obviously knows himself very well, and he must have key evidence in his hand that can threaten him, and he doesn't mind holding back when he hasn't understood the whole cards yet. But if he points out, the other side is just bluffing, and the humiliation he has suffered now will be repaid 100-fold. Valpo didn't hear the reaction from the other side, but he could feel the violent mood swings. At the beginning, he still wanted to make friends with this guy temporarily. After all, he was also a monarch of a country and 7 martial seas, with strength and strength. But after being threatened by him for a short time, he planned to change the way he got along. Valpo suddenly felt that Kaido and Doflamingo's way of getting along could still be used for reference. It is far more reliable and beneficial to make a dark-minded person fearful than to make him trust. After all, with a knife on Doflamingo's neck, he may not dare to betray Kaido, but he will definitely betray his friends and partners. It's too early to scare Doflamingo as a thug, but it's enough to leave the illusion that this guy might be powerful. When the strength becomes stronger in the future, after beating him in person, the rest will be much simpler. Can you do it with a population of 50 million? Doflamingo laughed happily when he heard this, gritted his teeth and said, I want you to know what you're talking about. Are you kidding? Haven't I been clear enough? Valpo's face did not change, and he remained flat. A population of 50 million. All the people in the world combined, at most, are more than 10 billion people. You want 1 in 200 people in the whole world in one sentence, and you are not joking. Doflamingo felt like he was talking to a madman. Even if I have so many people, can you get so much money? $2 or $3 trillion, I'm afraid to take out all the money of the Tianlong family, that's all. Valpo really didn't have the wealth that could compare to the Draconians, but he didn't mean to take out the money in one go. The 10-year deadline is to get the population I need. Of course, I only need a population of 50 million in total. In the future, whether it is born in the country, immigrants from other countries, or even refugees, I will take them in. For every extra charge I charge, your order will be reduced by 1. Quote. Valpo chuckled, so, while my country is still empty, let's go find the people I need. After all, the more you send in the early stage, the faster you can avoid the risk of not making money in the future. Quote. Just add a condition. I only want war refugees, not plundered populations. If I find out that I have been forced into slavery, I will not pay. Quote. You've bought slaves, and you're still thinking about keeping your last conscience. Said Doflamingo, dismissively. As I said, I'm buying people, not slaves. Valpo corrected Doflamingo's claim. This is my promise to all the people of the future as the king of the Drum Kingdom. As long as you can contribute to the country, you will be rewarded with what you deserve, and your freedom and life will be guaranteed. Quote. Drum Kingdom. Doflamingo felt familiar, but he couldn't remember it for a moment. Nodding to Monet, who was dressed as a secretary next to him, the woman with long light green hair understood, and silently walked out of the palace to collect information about the magnetic Drum Kingdom. Since you are sincere in wanting to buy it, then I have no reason not to accept this transaction. Doflamingo said. It's a chaotic situation, countless people are displaced every day, and it's not impossible to get the people you want in 10 years. Quote. But I need a deposit. I have been in the slave trade for more than 2 years, and I have handled only 30,000 slaves. So whether it's a channel or a message network, I have to spend a lot of money to get through. These require Bailey. Quote. 100 billion Baileys, this is the deposit I gave you, but I want to see the first population as fast as possible and reach my country. He had already obtained the information of the magnetic drum kingdom in his hand, and looking at the series of unspeakable national assets, he secretly swallowed his saliva. But noticing the small land area, Doflamingo frowned and said, "The magnetic drum kingdom is a winter island, and the area can only carry a maximum of 1 million people to live on it, so you buy so many people to go to the sea. Menculoni Island, which I bought some time ago and renamed New Magnetic Drum Island, you will directly transport the population there in the future, and someone will receive it." Quote. Menculoni is a huge island named after Morgangons, larger than Street. Ting Island. A few months ago, a mysterious buyer contacted more than a dozen well-known auction houses, including us, to buy the islands, and finally the buyer, among the many islands, chose Menculoni Island and made Mr. Morganhill's fortune. Monet explained at the right time. "Is it Miss Monet?" said Valpo. "I appreciate your abilities, and are you interested in working for me?" "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, King Valpo." Although he couldn't see anyone, Monet still managed to have perfect etiquette. "It is the honor of my life to be able to help the young master, and Monet can only apologize for your love." Quote. "That's a shame." Valpo smiled naturally, without any sense of pity. "After all, that is a woman who can die for Doflamingo, and even if she wants to come, she will not dare to use it. It's pretty much the same, if you have a deposit, you can let someone take it. There's been too much to do lately, and I don't have any extra manpower to transport Bailey to you." Quote. "I'll let people go to the district." Doflamingo paused and said, "I am looking forward to meeting you, King Valpo." "Me too." Click. Hanging up the phone, Doflamingo looked at the strength assessment column of the magnetic drum kingdom, which clearly stated that it was very weak. He still believes in his own intelligence organization. It would certainly be enough to let them collect secrets about the latest operations of the Navy, or the movements of those sea pirates. But some kingdoms, and there will be no big errors. If it is really a very weak country, as mentioned above, he can't understand how confident that king can say such things to himself. Monet, family member, who is closest to the drum kingdom, asked Doflamingo. Now is not the time when the position will be firmly established in 10 years, and most of the family's cadres are flexing their power and expanding trade routes around the world. Pika is cultivating in Alabaston at this time, and there is nothing important to arrange for him to be tempted. As Doflamingo's secretary, he was naturally able to accurately understand what his boss meant. Pika's mastery of fruit abilities has improved a lot lately, and it is indeed a good fit for this task. Doflamingo's eyes showed the killing intent that couldn't be hidden by sunglasses, and he said coldly, "If that guy is a bluffing idiot, let him destroy the magnetic drum king directly, and leave no one alive." Understood. As the strongest person in the family, except for Doflamingo, Pika naturally has a strong strength. And the ability of the stone fruit is even more destructive than that of Doflamingo's thread fruit. Especially for the magnetic drum kingdom, a country with high mountains and thick snow, any avalanche is enough to deliver a devastating blow within a certain range. In their eyes, more than 200,000 living people are like dust that can be swept away at any time, and they can't cause the slightest emotional fluctuation. The ruthlessness of the pirates is vividly exposed at this moment. Thanks for watching.